And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Mining in the Northwest is big business, and with that business comes danger. Laws have been put in place to ensure a team is on hand at all times to provide rescue techniques and first aid. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 1991.
2, 3, 15.
Basic CPR. Many people know how to administer it, but few people are put in the position where they actually have to use it. Most everyday working environments are pretty much hazard-free. The same can't be said for a mine site. By law, each site is required to have its own mine safety team.
To maintain the teams at the high standard, every year there's competition in British Columbia per zone, and following that there's a provincial competition. The idea is to keep the teams as up to date and as prime as possible.
The mine safety competition consists of 6 teams and 6 different tests. In the bench section, the teams are paired off to tackle 3 separate areas. CPR is just one section. Both team members are judged on their ability to perform 1- and 2-man CPR as a team. That's the trick. Team. Only one of the men is sent in at a time. He has to remember to ask for help. Twice if he expects to get any. If he doesn't ask, he ends up blowing into a dummy by himself for 10 minutes, while his partner waits nearby. Half of the marks are given when both are administering CPR, so if they don't get a chance to work together, it's almost a sure fail. In the knots test, both team members are asked to tie a given number of knots by the judge. If one of them ties it wrong the first time, half of the mark is deducted. And definitely the most strenuous of the 3, the pulleys test.
In this test, they're trying to move the pickup 4 feet up the hill. We're giving them 1 rope and 4 pulleys, and the maximum advantage they can get is a 12-to-1. So for if they pull 12 feet, the truck will move 1 foot.
Oh, it sounds simple enough, but clearly it's not. If you don't get the ratio set properly, you might only move the truck a few inches. But King says if the 12-to-1 is achieved, one man could pull it with one arm. In order to make it that easy, the miners came up with some interesting techniques.
They're being very creative, actually. They've put together some that we never imagined that they'd try, but they've been doing quite well. A couple of them have gone through it and realized the mistakes they've made, and they've just run out of time.
The teams have no idea what each position consists of before they get there. They all rotate at the same time after being allowed only a half hour for each test. The first aid task tests the team's ability to render first aid to injured parties, prevent the injuries from becoming worse, and promote recovery. In the scenario, 2 millwrights were working on a conveyor system while it was running. One of the millwrights has sustained a traumatic injury to his right arm. The other has fallen on a knife and has a lacerated abdominal wound. The safety team must first stop the conveyor. When one of the team members pulls the control switch, it creates an explosion. If he's standing in front of the switch, he dies. If he's standing to the side, he only sustains 1- and 2-degree burns to the eyes and facial area. The objective for the team is to stop the conveyor, fully immobilize the millwright's injured arm, contain the bowel protrusion on the other, and treat the burns of the mine rescue worker.
How's that other patient? Does he need any care? Down on the ground there.
The objective of the smoke task is to evaluate the team's performance during and after toxic or oxygen-deficient atmospheres. In the scenario, 2 welders are at work inside a closed feed chute. Both succumb to the lack of oxygen inside the tank. One is unconscious and the other disoriented, dizzy, and weak. The objective for the mine safety team is to shut down the welder, test the air inside the tank, and put on self-contained breathing apparatus to enter the feed bin. Once in, they have to give oxygen to the unconscious patient, put the breathing apparatus on the confused one, and the most difficult, get everybody back out.
I think getting Kevin out of that tank over there, it was I don't know if you saw it or not, it was a little narrow chute, about 2 by 2, and Kevin's quite a big guy there, and he got stuck down in there.
Although all of the situations are staged, they're lifelike enough to be good experience for the teams.
What we're trying to simulate is events that could happen at a mine site. As an example, in the smoke room, you have the idea is there's two welders who are working in a closed container, and an accident happened. Then people have to get in there. The smokes, possibility of fire. Then they have to take the proper approach to make sure nobody gets injured. And primarily the rescue team. One item you have to be very careful about is make sure that your team doesn't get in danger while trying to rescue somebody else. It's always a very basic priority.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. Test anxiety has two components, mental and physical. The mental component of stress includes all your thoughts and worries about tests. The physical component includes feelings, sensations, and tension. Let us return to the archives as Dennis Harper shares how he fared on written tests.
The only break the teams got from the purely physical work was during the written portion of the competition. But not all of the teams were relieved. One said the written test was the hardest part of the whole day.
Written's always harder. They had 100 questions, 30 minutes, that's better than 3 questions a minute. It takes a lot.
The written exam is devised to test the team's knowledge in all phases of mine rescue work. Another first aid test was through St. John Ambulance, who had their own section set up at the competition.
Well, this is what we call a 3-person miners competition, and basically you have 3 people on a team, and you immediately take one person away and make a patient of him and pick the other 2 to do first aid on him. So they may lose the best member of their team as far as first aid goes right off the bat.
In this scenario, a miner is knocked between the shoulder blades by the hook of a crane. His wrist, which he's lying on, is probably broken, and he's feeling numbness and tingling in his legs and feet. The only people around are his 2 co-workers. They're expected to treat him and prepare him for evacuation. Nearly all of the teams took a different approach to treating the casualty.
Well, they're all doing something different. It doesn't matter how you set up the problem. Everybody messes up in one part and shines in another, and they're all doing it in different places.
That leaves only one more task, and the most frequent answer to the question, what was the hardest part?
Probably the rope task. It was something that we hadn't really anticipated, and it was quite new to us. Therefore, we didn't do it as fast as we expected.
The objective of the rope task, besides physically exhausting the teams, is to test their ability to perform a rescue operation with the use of ropes, pulleys, and other rescue equipment under any condition and in any terrain. In this scenario, 2 people on an all-terrain vehicle have wandered into a quarry via the back road. Both are intoxicated. One rider is down the embankment after being thrown off the ATV. The other is on the bench above, staggering around in a drunken stupor. The ATV is above the patient with the front wheel overhanging the edge.
I think the rope work was pretty tough. That's probably about the one that I think was the most challenging.
The mine safety team has to attack the problem from the lower level. They should keep the person on the top level away from the embankment, secure the ATV and the patient to prevent the condition from becoming worse, and remove both parties to the safety of the lower level without jeopardizing anyone's safety. For the spectators, the entire day was an excitement to watch.
Oh, it's great out here. It's a perfect day for it. It's real enjoyable to watch them use all their techniques that they've learned, all the hours they spent practicing to actually be able to see them put them into practice.
Oh, it certainly seems to be very difficult for them. I was watching the hill climb over there, and the teams are having a lot of trouble getting up there.
It's a very high caliber of competition, and the exercises are very good.
The smoke exhibition was probably the best, I thought. I think it was the most intricate.
By the end of the day, the safety teams were exhausted. If running up hills, carrying bodies, and giving mouth-to-mouth wasn't tiring enough, they'd also been packing around a stretcher filled with essentials.
Basic rescue equipment, rope, oxygen therapy units, blankets, and a bunch of personal gear for setting up pulley systems, stretcher ties, blanketing, and first aid.
Win or lose, the day was a success, and the teams were just happy to have had the chance to put themselves to the test.
It's close to real life, the way they set it up quite professionally, the competition itself, so there is lots to learn. You could very easily run into problems like this in real life, so you do have that experience to gain from it.
Just the best form of training that you can have. You're just doing things in classrooms or out on yourself, and you never get it to be able to have a situation where everything's rigged up as well as they get rigged up and set up to be lifelike as you do in these competitions, so it's really good.
Whenever you have 6 people trying to work together in any kind of operation, it's very important to have them all help each other. And I think the nicest thing about the whole event is it helps the 6-man team work together and learn a lot.
I'd like to thank the community of Terrace for putting it on, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The Jaws of Life was invented by George Hurst in 1961 after he witnessed a rescue crew take over an hour to remove race car drivers from wrecked vehicles. The Jaws of Life consist of 4 main components: cutters, spreaders, rams, and power source. Let us return to the archives to see it in action.
Someone is in the vehicle.
A car accident and subsequent fire and rescue. This is an all too often occurrence. For the men and women in charge of saving lives, preparation and diligent training can be the difference between life and death. Earlier this year, during Emergency Preparedness Week, a combination of Terrace and Thornhill fire departments, along with the BC Ambulance Service, staged a public demonstration of emergency response. The idea, of course, was to give residents a first-hand look at the intricate procedures that can save a human life. As the emergency crews arrive on the scene, there's an ever-present priority that has to take place.
We're concerned about life. We want to know just if anyone is injured, first of all, we're all concerned about the maintenance of life or the preservation of life, and then property and other things that come afterwards. But basically, it's all the main item to be concerned with is life and safety of the people responding to the incident.
The early stages of rescue are critical, and although rapid recovery of the victim is of the utmost importance, setting a plan of action must be foremost on the minds of the response team.
It's very important to immediately start to extinguish the fire, control the fire, assess the scene as well. As you notice, the incident commander went around, spoke to the patient in the vehicle, and immediately ordered someone to start putting water in the other vehicle.
Following the assessment of the circumstances and an action plan is established, it's time for the response team to systematically follow procedure.
We do these exercises to train our people. All too often we search for vehicles to work on, and when we put on a demonstration like this, it gives us an opportunity to train our junior people along with our senior people that are trained themselves. They hone their own skills as well as train the younger people, always maintaining, as you saw, that we only had a certain number of people around the vehicle, not a mob, so as not to be in the way of the people that are actually doing the work.
While it was important for the public to appreciate and learn the techniques of emergency response, it was not hard to be fascinated by the work ethics of the men and women on the job, and in some cases, the equipment used. Technology, as in almost every other facet of life, has assisted in the job of rescue and recovery. As well, the objects involved in saving lives can be as varied as the accidents which occur.
The Jaws of Life is a good piece of equipment. There are identical pieces of equipment made by Hull Matro, different people. We like to refer to them as rescue tools, extrication tools, not the Jaws per se, because we happen to have Jaws on hand here in Terrace. A lot of other departments, other areas use the different types of equipment that are on the market, but we don't only use the Jaws. As you notice, we use a come-along, we use blocking, we use airbags to lift and stabilize, and these are all good extrication tools as well.
In this particular instance, the extrication devices performed admirably in removing the injured person from the vehicle. So much for the first phase of the treatment process. It is now time for the paramedic team to take over, ensuring the victim is secure and preparing for transportation to a medical facility.
Often the paramedic people know they do know their job. The situation may dictate that this vehicle might have been 30, 40 feet below the highway, could have been partly submerged. Teamwork is needed to extricate the person from the vehicle and then get him from the vehicle into transportation, whether it be an ambulance or whether it be on a mass casualty, maybe a different type of vehicle that would be used. The teamwork is needed to be able to move a person from the vehicle into safe transportation. Doing it right is more important than doing it fast. Often you'll see an ambulance or a fire truck respond, we go out, code 3, lights and siren, we come home quietly. We take care of the people, we take care of the incident, and there's no need to rush. If we do a good job at the scene of an accident, stabilize the patient, load him into an ambulance, when we're transporting to the hospital, the emergency is not totally over, but most often you'll find that the danger to life has been eliminated, and all we're doing at that point is prolonging life, getting him to hospital safely.
The supervisor, or in this case, Terrace Fire Chief Bob Beckett, has seen this rehearsal before, but knows its importance because practice is crucial, regardless of the circumstance.
This was a minor simulated incident on a much larger scale. We would have to involve everyone, and there would have to be teamwork, and that's why we need to train together, so that when we look at training for a fire situation or a rescue situation, we need to be able to tap into all potential resources that may be required to assist.
The purpose of this particular exercise certainly had more than one meaning. Letting the public in on technique in the life-saving process is an ulterior motive. But in addition to that, all 3 units were hoping for a greater appreciation of a job that is difficult at best.
I think it's recognition for the fire department, recognizing the amount of work and effort and training that goes into it, recognizing that we're no longer just a suppression-oriented organization, that the demands that are placed on the Terrace Fire Department and any fire department in British Columbia include not just firefighting, they include extrication, rescue, medical emergencies, fire prevention, training, education, that it's no longer just a club for the fellows to get together, that the demands are very real, and that in order for us to meet those demands and meet the expectations of the public, we have to work very hard, in order to ensure that we can meet those demands. And I guess the bottom line is that we need the support. We need the support from City Council, we need the support from the municipality in order to ensure that we can meet those demands. On a personal note, I'm a very biased individual with respect to drinking and driving, for example, and I would hope that this would simulate the potential as a result of a drunken driver situation. So there's lots of messages there for the public, lots of messages for our own people with respect to the training and doing it safely. I think it's a great exercise for everyone, and I think it's good entertainment as well. It's not quite like 911 that you see on TV, but it's almost as close to the real thing as we can possibly make it.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
In a nursery, plants are nurtured by providing them the optimum growing conditions to ensure germination. Nursery saves considerable time for raising the next crop. In this final segment of Open Connection, we return to the archives with Cliff Goodwill of Skeena Valley Nursery.
I and my boy moved up here at that time and started the program of building the house, and 3 months later my wife and the rest of the family moved up in the house. It wasn't quite completed at that time, nor is it yet. And so we've been working on that and other programs since that.
The nursery was not the original line of work Clifford Goodwill had in mind. The first greenhouse built was to shelter small trees for a reforestation project he had bid on. Goodwill didn't get the project and was left with the greenhouse.
And this left me with a facility and really nothing to use it for. And consequently, the first year we opened up with a nursery was in a greenhouse that was designed originally for forestry trees. I'm sort of happy it wound up this way, but we don't know what we start into sometimes.
Perhaps the Goodwills did chance upon the nursery profession, but maybe it was fate, because whatever they're doing, they're certainly doing right. When the nursery was first established, it was primarily selling wholesale. Then individuals approached Goodwill for plants, and he began to sell retail as well. Goodwill's retail prices were very competitive, low enough that probably even the wholesaler couldn't keep up.
I didn't feel I had ought to raise my prices, being that I started retailing before I started wholesaling. But after we went into all retail, and that's what we consider ourselves now, all retail, we lowered our prices to what they would be comparative to a wholesale price, allowing a direct outlet to the people. And I think with the amount of finances that people have to watch today, that's probably one of the drawing cards, is the fact of our low prices.
Comes to $47.41.
Low prices are definitely one of the main reasons people shop at the Skeena Valley Nursery. Some of the huge hanging plants sell for only a little more than $10, less than half of what you might have to pay elsewhere. More than one shopper said price was the main reason they made the drive.
We're repeat customers here. The quality's good and the price is right.
Well, we find they're quite cheap.
We've come out here a year before last year and bought a whole bunch of stuff, and you can't beat the price, you can't beat the quality of the product. It's really good, and it grows good too.
That's the second big drawing factor, quality. And good quality takes time and money. But the Goodwills feel it's worth it to have plants that attract the customer's eye.
We put a lot of time into growing plants early, and we have a lot of plants that are blooming very early in the spring. People like to have, we have a relatively short time maybe to enjoy our flowers, and they like to see them bloom to start with, I believe. It takes a lot more work. It's not hard growing plants and having them ready in a month from now, but to have them blooming now takes quite a lot more energy and a lot more cost.
Hanging fuchsias are one of the biggest sellers at the nursery because they're so big. Unlike most other places, the Goodwills plant their fuchsias in October, a couple of months before everyone else. So by May, they're giant size.
From the cuttings that I receive, I start making pots up immediately. They have several months to grow. It takes a lot of room, a lot of heat, and this all is very costly. I think this is one reason why people do come out. It is a drawing card.
Between annuals, 70 to 80 types of perennials, and many types of vegetables, selection at the nursery is vast.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's quite large. It's a good selection. Everything looks healthy.
Actually, it's the first time I've ever been out here. It's beautiful. I can see why people come back.
Looks good so far. I'm going back to buy more.
With the probably thousands of plants being grown in the greenhouses, during the winter, heat is of the essence. The Goodwills used to heat by wood, but it got to be too expensive and too tiring.
The volume of wood that we consumed was astronomical. We could burn as much as a semi-load of wood in 10 or 12 days if it was real cold weather. And the amount of labor that it took to do this type of work was very, very time-consuming. It was also stoking the fire as much as...
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.